Cornversations, episode 10. We finally made it to double digits. Welcome back if you are a recurring listener, or if you're a first-time listener, welcome in. Happy to have you, and hopefully you will be back for more episodes. Whether you are a returning listener or you're here for the first time, go ahead and make sure to give us a follow on socials, likes, comments, subscribes. They're all really helpful for the show. It is what's going to help this thing grow and get off the ground even further. We're on all the major social networks. I've got a Facebook page for Cornversations. We're on Instagram at cornversationspod, at X. We're at kbex_ATC. And of course, if you want to leave us a mailbag question, send us a note to cornversationspod at gmail.com. We're on all the major platforms for podcast listening: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. So give us a follow, rate us, subscribe to us. That is helpful, and keep the conversation going, because that's really what this is all about. We got a really exciting show coming up today. We're going to hit a few different topics, bounce around the sports world. We'll start with the NFL trade deadline, which we're just about 24 hours away from closing. We'll then shift over to the ESPN YouTube television saga that is playing out before our eyes. And we'll end with a fun segment that I put together to celebrate the kickoff of the new college basketball season. But I am bearing the lead a little bit, because the most exciting part about this episode, and it did take us 10 episodes to get here, but we are finally here, is that we, for the first time, have a guest on Cornversation. So I want to introduce him quickly here and give him a chance to say hi. My buddy Matt, who we're going to refer to as the Thumbnail for the rest of this episode. Those of you that are savants of Corn Media may recognize that name from Around the Corn Sports blog. The Thumbnail was a guest prognosticator earlier this season for college football picks, and he did beat Old K-Bex. He's one of many who has been able to do that this season. But I will give him an opportunity to say hi. So how's it going, Thumbnail?
Doing good on my end. I got to be honest with you, Kyle. My palms are a little sweaty over here because this is a long time coming. First person on the podcast is a guest, and I know the audience you've built, and I don't want to mess this up. So this is my first time on the podcast.
Well, I appreciate you being here too, and trust me, you cannot mess anything up. The audience at this point, they're faithful listeners, and hopefully this will help us get to that next level too. So appreciate you joining, and hopefully we'll have a great episode that'll spur a lot of discussion outside of ours as well. But
I do want to make a quick note here. If it is fall out here in Boston, and it's getting a little colder, so when that merch comes available for Conversations, I'm going to be needing a hoodie or possibly a scarf or a long sleeve. So I don't know if those have hit the market yet, but I'm keeping my eye out for that.
yeah, no, great plug. They have not hit the market, and technically I don't expect them to. However, I mentioned it in a previous episode that there have been some test pieces of apparel that I have tried on, and they look pretty good. So for those of you that are listening right now, that wanna understand more about what the Thumbnail is talking about, I'll probably put some more of that information on the socials here in the coming days. So good point. We'll definitely get you a hoodie at some point when it's available, and hopefully others will like that as well. But yeah, without any further ado, let's just jump right into the NFL trade rumors. This is something that you actually came up with, so I got to give you credit for this segment. What we're going to do here today is cover basically a handful of players that we've picked out that have been part of the trade rumor conversations here in the last days and weeks. And what we're going to try to do is discuss these guys at a little bit of length. And then ultimately, between you and I, we're going to come to a decision as to whether or not we buy or sell these guys actually getting dealt from their current teams. So it's a little bit of conversation about these guys individual, and then ultimately we're going to make a decision whether or not these guys are sticking with who they're with or if they're going to be playing in different colors come next week.
Sounds good.
So, all right. Well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start it off with a big hitter here. And this was one that I know you really were pushing to have on the show. So we'll go ahead and we'll kick it off with this guy. Trey Hendrickson, edge rusher for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's been a guy who's been in the news as far as where he's going to be ending up playing for quite some time now this year. He was obviously the topic of contract negotiations before the season started. And here we are now, a guy who is being brought up as a potential trade bait for the Bengals, who have gotten unlucky yet again with the injury to Joe Burrow and seemingly the Joe Flacco experiment not necessarily working out shortly after takeoff here. So, what do you think, Thumbnail? Trey Hendrickson, is this a guy that you see as potential to move?
Definitely, there will be a lot of teams interested in Trey Hendrickson, especially as we kind of go down the stretch of the season. We're about the halfway mark right now, and I think a lot of teams realize what their strengths and weaknesses are. And outside of quarterback, I do think a pass rush is one of the most important things that a team can have if they're going to be successful with a deep playoff run. And just thinking back to some of the teams that have won the Super Bowl, last year with the Eagles or some of those great Giants teams with Michael Strahan, they all had a great pass rush and could overcome a great quarterback like Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady. So I think Trey Hendrickson is probably one of the sexiest names on the board. There are others such as Miles Garrett or Max Crosby who probably aren't available. Trey Hendrickson is maybe the most realistic if he does, be put on the market. I don't think the Bengals will trade him. I do know they're asking for at the very least, a first round pick, and he's going to want a new contract as well. Kind of how you mentioned, they kind of had that contract dispute in the off season where he said he wanted to be traded, and then they ultimately worked out his deal where he's making 30 million a year this year. So if he does get moved, he's definitely going to want that contract extension of a minimum 30 million a year, and some of the top edge rushers now are making it in the 40-45 million range. You just saw it with Aiden Hutchinson, Miles Garrett, and others. So Trey Hendrickson, I think, is definitely deserving of that type of money. He's 30 years old with a little bit of injury concern, so I don't think he's necessarily as much of a home run contract as maybe some of those other guys. But he has led the league in sacks at least once in his career, which I believe was last year with 17.5 sacks, and then the year before that he had 17.5 sacks as well. So he's definitely an elite edge rusher, and there's a handful of teams that I could see reaching out to the Bengals, potentially offering that first round pick that they want. And this type of player, I think every team in the NFL that's in contention would definitely at least call the Bengals to do their due diligence. But some of the best fits that I have here are one, the New England Patriots, just because they have the cap available. And, they have a good interior defensive line. They've currently not allowed a 50-yard rusher yet this year. However, they do have a poor pass rush. So that's definitely a piece the Patriots need if they're going to shore up that line and, potentially make a serious run in the playoffs if they are able to make it there. Some other suitors I see are the Eagles, Colts, and 49ers. The 49ers definitely.
Let me stop you for a sec there. Yeah, because you brought up the Eagles, and actually, I was thinking you brought up a really good point that winners have historically had an elite edge rusher to help supplement what they're doing defensively. But with the Eagles, I think they actually just landed on a deal for Jalen Phillips. So do you think they're really still in the running right now given that they've gotten that guy from Miami to kind of fill that gap that they have this year? Or was that a situation where, had Phillips not been dealt, that Hendrickson might have, wanted to be in Philly as opposed to some of these other suitors?
That's a good point, Kyle. That trade did just happen today, so some of the research I did may have been slightly outdated just by a couple hours. So maybe the Eagles are out on that one.
Yeah, and I'm busting you a little bit because no, I think that they were definitely a contender for this. Um, but one that you didn't mention, and I'm curious on your thoughts on here. What about Dallas? I mean, they traded away an elite pass rusher this year, and lo and behold, they've got an offense right now that's competing. And I think what's also interesting about the Cowboys is that they're in a division right now that seemingly is pretty wide open. I mean, Philly is there, yes, and they're filling the needs that they need to fill. Um, Phillips is one of those examples, but you've got teams in Washington and New York that probably aren't going to compete this year. I mean, we don't know how long Jaden Daniels is going to be out, and their defense is horrible. So I don't really see them as competitors in that division. And New York has had their moments, but I don't really think they're ready to compete yet either. So you're looking at a team in Dallas who at 3-4-1, I believe, is in the mix, and they're a team that could go after a guy like Hendrickson to replace Micah Parsons.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that is a fit. With Jerry Jones and his hesitancy to pay some of these top players, I do wonder if he would be interested outside of this year with Trey Hendrickson. But certainly this year, I think things have opened up for the Cowboys to at least contend for the playoffs. So I do think he could work for the Cowboys certainly.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? I mean, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Is it a buy or sell? You think Hendrickson is going to be with Cincinnati here in a day, or do you think he is out the door?
So I would say that this is a sell. I think we probably both agree on this one. Just for a couple reasons, the Bengals have clearly the worst defense in the NFL, giving up 300 points, which is by far the most. Most teams are just around the 200-point range for points against. So they need some help on that defensive side of the ball, and you got to keep some of the top talent in the league in the locker room. So unless they get blown away with an offer, I think Hendrickson stays in Cincinnati.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I thought that Dallas might be a suitor because they were rumored to have called about Max Crosby, and apparently Las Vegas is not taking any calls for him. So maybe they would go after a guy like Hendrickson. But I agree with you. I think there's history to suggest um, that Jerry Jones doesn't want to pay a guy like
Mhm.
this what he thinks he's worth. So that might be kind of a difficult thing. And at the end of the day, while I think Cincinnati's best interest might be to clear house of both some people on the coaching staff as well as some of the players, I don't get the sense that they're ready to do that yet. So I agree. I think we're both on the same page here that Hendrickson is going to be in Cincinnati come Wednesday. Um, Moving on to the next guy here, and this one's a little bit less of a sexy name. However, I'm going to throw two names in here because they're on the same team. Um, Rash, Rashid Shaheed was the guy that I have listed here, but we're also going to bring in his partner in crime, Chris Olave. Both of these guys, of course, wide receivers for the Saints. Shaheed has a contract that expires at the end of this year. Olave's expires at the end of
Mhm.
2026. The Saints are not competing for much this year, and they've got a new head coach in Kellen Moore, who they might be giving a little bit of a leash to do some things in the offseason. So, what do you think about both of these guys, Shaheed and Olave? Do you think either one of them are headed out the door?
So I'll start with Chris Olave. He's the number one for the Saints for the wide receiver, and I don't think the Saints would move off of him just for a couple reasons. One, they have him tied up for at least you said through 2026, so through past this year, and they do have a young quarterback, Tyler Shaw. I always mess up his last name. Is it Shuck?
Uh,
How do you say
I
that?
believe it's Tyler Show.
Tyler Show. Okay, so just from a front office standpoint and a coaching standpoint, to me, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to use a second round pick on a quarterback and then get rid of all the talent around him. So with Olave, kind of with the Trey Hendrickson deal, unless they get blown away with an offer, I don't necessarily see them moving off of him. Some good fits for him if they do move off of him, I would think, are the Pittsburgh Steelers
Yeah.
or the Buffalo
Yeah.
Bills are definitely in need of some talent at the wide receiver position.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100% about the potential landing spots for guys like that. I think Pittsburgh and Buffalo would be good spots for a wide receiver to go. I am with you. I question whether or not the Saints want to let go of these guys. I mean, at the end of the day, they've got some other holes to fill beyond wide receiver. Kellen Moore is a guy who is known, obviously, for his offensive capabilities as a head coach. So, does he really want to get rid of wide receiver one in exchange for probably some draft picks where you'd have to hit on them in order for that to work out? And also, what I've heard, particularly about Shaheed, is that the Saints probably would be looking for a day 2 draft pick for him, and a guy who's coming at the end of his contract. That's going to scare a lot of teams away. So while I do see good fits in Pittsburgh and Buffalo for these two guys, I don't necessarily think it's going to happen. So I'm with you. I would sell this one as well. I think both of these guys are staying put uh, in the Big Easy, and we're going to see them in Saints colors here next week. But moving right along, this one's going to hit close to home for you as a Cleveland fan. Jerome Brown. Jerome Brown, what am I saying? Jerome Ford is on the docket here. This is a guy who has filled in, I would say, valiantly for the Browns, given some injuries that they've had in the past, and then now bringing along some younger guys into the squad. But he is being linked to a number of spots. Where do you see this guy falling?
So, there are, a couple teams that are in kind of desperate need of running back right now. And the teams that, are willing to maybe make a trade for a guy like Jerome Ford are probably looking for some running back depth rather than him being the main cowbell or, the main guy leading the way. So I know I've mentioned the Patriots in the past with some of the other players, but I do think the Colts and Chargers are some potential matches as well for Jerome Ford. The Chargers have kind of been decimated with injury the last couple weeks. I do know Joe Alt, as well as on the offensive line, has gone down, and then they've lost Najee Harris and Omari and Hampton, so they're kind of struggling over there. But I do know that Jim Harbaugh, likes to hang his hat on the run game. So Jerome Ford could definitely end up on the Chargers or possibly the Patriots, who also kind of have thin depth at the running back position.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the Chargers are a good spot as well for him. I mean, like I said, this is a guy who seems to be able to quickly fill in and give a team what they're looking for without a lot of fanfare. And that is a culture fit, I feel like, in Los Angeles with what Harbaugh's got going on there. And you're right. I mean, and I'm unfortunately, uh, I'm on the short end of the stick here with regards to guys like Amari and Hampton when you consider fantasy assets. So I've I've been victim to that to some extent as well. But I do see this as a potential buy. I think the Browns are willing to let go of Ford. You kind of look at the locker room right now and what they've got at depth there right now, and I think that they've brought in pieces that can pretty much fill all of the things that Ford brought to the table between Judkins and Dylan Sampson. So if it's not Los Angeles, maybe it is somebody like New England. But I think this is so far this is the first one where I would feel pretty confident saying, yeah, that's a buy.
I think, yeah, I agree with you as well. And from the Browns' perspective, they have Judkins back there as well as Dylan Sampson. They're trying to get some more carries for. So, there's no real reason for them to hold on to Jerome Ford. And for a team like New England, one note of um, you know, importance, I guess, for Jerome Ford is that he does only have one fumble in his career, and the Patriots have had issues holding on to the football with running backs. Ramondre Stevenson, when healthy, is a good running back. However, he tends to have trouble holding onto the ball, and Travion Henderson fumbled as well 2 weeks ago. So, that could be some reliability for the Patriots if they trade for Jerome Ford.
Yeah, and actually, to maybe get a little bit deeper into that, as far as New England is concerned, do you think Vrabel is above playing a little bit of mind games to keep people on their toes in that locker room? I mean, if you bring in a guy like Jerome Ford, it maybe lights a fire under a guy like Stevenson, and you've got some friendly competition there about who's going to get some carries based on who's holding on to the ball.
Oh, definitely. And, I've listened to the weekly podcast where they have Mike Vrabel on as the guest. And, he said the Patriots are always open to improving the roster, which, I'm sure every head coach would say that. But you don't want guys getting too comfortable, which I don't think they are in New England. But you do want to keep people on their toes to, feel like you need to improve every week. So.
Right, right. Yeah, well, Vrabel is from the Belichick school of coaching, so I wouldn't put it past him to do something like that. Which, nothing wrong with it. I mean, that's the right thing to do if you're trying to make sure that your locker room is buttoned up and you've got the right guys in the right spots. So, all right, well, if it's not uh, if it's not Jerome Ford, maybe it'll be this guy, Brees Hall. How about him? You've got a guy who has been, while healthy, very productive for the Jets. But the Jets, of course, are doing Jets things, and they have one victory this year. So they've already, as we mentioned earlier, dealt Jalen Phillips to the Eagles. Do you see the Jets letting go of another star in Brees Hall?
So Brees Hall, I do think the Jets probably will want to hold on to him, but I just have a gut feeling that a team like the Kansas City Chiefs or, even the Chargers, like how we just mentioned, are going to possibly offer them something that they can't refuse. Watching the Kansas City Chiefs the last couple weeks, it looks like they've found, the answer at wide receiver with Rashee Rice coming back and whatnot. But, they have real problems at running back with Isaac Pacheco and Kareem Hunt. I just don't know if that's going to get it done in the playoffs or potentially making a Super Bowl run. So I could definitely see them, wanting to make the most of the Patrick Mahomes era and trading away some valuable draft capital for Brees Hall. I do see the asking price for him being a second or third round pick. So maybe the Jets can get a couple teams in the same division to get into a bidding war for Brees Hall. But if they're not going to get what they're asking for, then if I'm the Jets, I do hold on to him because you have that first year head coach, and you do want to keep some weapons back there. So I'll say this is a buy, but we'll just see what happens.
Yeah. No, you brought up a good point there in terms of I do think that's going to be the approach from the Jets. I think they said that they're open if an offer they can't refuse comes along. So they're definitely leaving the door open there. I just wonder whether or not you're going to get a team who's going to be willing to part with uh, whatever in reality an offer that they can't refuse actually is. And I don't know if it's going to be Kansas City. I agree. They've got a question there running back. However, Brashad Smith was just drafted this year, and I'm not really sure what exactly is going on there with him because I've heard good things coming out of camp there about his abilities, but they haven't really utilized him to the extent that I thought they might. So I think there's a number of options there, and Kansas City's, in my opinion, they're well known for being able to kind of work with guys as the season goes along. And maybe if it's not working out the first half of the season, you get something totally unexpected from someone in the second half of the season. And a lot of that comes down to coaching and some of the schematics they're going to put together. But um, for me, I would actually call this one a sell. I would agree with you that um, the Jets, despite their struggles, probably don't want to let go of literally everything. If anything, just because you're dealing with a media hailstorm if they let everybody go and basically call uncle on the season. But I think this is the first one that we're actually not in alignment on. So it's that's interesting, given that Brees Hall has certainly been in the discussion as far as trade rumors are concerned for a number of weeks, not just the last few days or so.
Right, and I just think the Chiefs or the Chargers definitely see themselves as kind of neck and neck right now, and needing to also catch up to the Broncos. And any way to improve that roster, I think they're in that position right now to make a move. So we'll see. Brees Hall is definitely a sexier name than Jerome Ford for obvious reasons. But yeah, he is having his best year right now with 5 yards a carry, and he's also a good blocking running back, as well as catching the ball as well in the backfield. So he's a versatile player that I think could really elevate both the Chiefs and Chargers.
Yeah, for sure. No, he will definitely elevate any team he goes to if he does get dealt. So that'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. Rounding it out, this is our last player that we have listed here, and I know this one was of particular interest to you as well, given where he started his career in the NFL. Um, Jacoby Myers, wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders. This is a guy who has kind of pushed himself into the news cycle due to some of his unhappiness being in Las Vegas. But this is now a guy who is in the trade rumor circulation as well, given the way that Las Vegas' season has gone. So, what do you think about Jacoby Myers? This is a guy that you might see ending up on what is this? This will be a second team in as many years.
Yeah, so I definitely see this as a buy. He's kind of been disgruntled with his contract situation there in Las Vegas, and the team isn't performing too well with Pete Carroll and Geno Smith at quarterback. So I think the Raiders will move off of him, and I do think there are actually a lot of suitors here. We've mentioned the Steelers and the Bills for the wide receivers from the Saints, but I think Jacoby Myers would really fit well with the Steelers because he can play on the outside or in the slot, and the Steelers have DK Metcalf, and then after that, they have three tight ends and a couple running backs that catch the ball. So Aaron Rodgers is on the end of his leash with his career, and if they're going to make a move, they're definitely going to have to upgrade at the wide receiver position. And I kind of feel the same way with the Bills. They have a bunch of guys that are maybe a wide receiver too, um, at talent wise. And I think that they're going to need to beef up their wide receiver room as well if they're going to make a serious run and get past the Chiefs. So, one thing of note that you did mention, he did have his best years in New England with Josh McDaniels at the as the offensive coordinator. I mean, he did have a good year in Vegas when Josh McDaniels was the coach before he got fired. So it would be interesting if he came back to New England with a reunion, but I just personally don't see that happening. Him leaving, and it was kind of a bad situation there at the end with him. So I think the Patriots are kind of looking for a new identity and don't want to mess up the chemistry in the wide receiver room too much, but it is certainly a possibility. But I do have this as a buy.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that bringing a guy back to a situation that kind of ended in a sour note is going to be the right fit for him. But I do think,
I mean, he did have the most meme worthy low light of all time with that lateral back to Mac Jones. If you remember that game against the Raiders, I mean, I think that's the nail in the coffin playing for that franchise
Yeah.
with the Patriots.
Yeah. I do think the best fit for them is, as you brought up, would be Pittsburgh. I just wonder whether or not, given how he has kind of portrayed himself as a guy who, might be a little bit disgruntled in a certain situation, whether or not Pittsburgh wants to deal with it. I think that they've already got kind of a lot going on there right now between Aaron Rodgers being there. DK Metcalf is he's a pretty quiet guy. I don't think he's going to cause much trouble, but um, the Mike Tomlin story is going to continue to rear its ugly head for as long as Pittsburgh is not winning titles. And defensively, Pittsburgh has been oddly weak this year, despite kind of making some moves that would have suggested the opposite would be the case. So I wonder if there's too much going on in Pittsburgh right now for them to make a move for a guy like this, which is why, despite them maybe being the best fit, I think perhaps if he gets sold, it's to Buffalo, and I could see that being the case, that Buffalo takes a chance on this guy. I don't think that you would see him being unhappy given the opportunity to catch balls from Josh Allen. However, Buffalo has also dealt with Stephon Diggs in the past, and maybe they still have a sour taste in their mouth about how that ended. So I actually see this as a sell, despite Vegas not really going anywhere quickly and maybe the environment being right for a guy like Jacoby Myers to go. I think that at the end of the day, they might just hold on to him, and it's not going to be a happy situation for a guy like Myers. And maybe some teams will feel like they missed out. But I just wonder if push comes to shove, you get to the 11th hour, if they're actually going to make something happen with this guy.
Right. And the asking price for him looks to be a day two asset as well. So a second or maybe third round pick. So if a team like the Steelers or Bills want to move off of that level of pick, that's just something that they'd have to ask
Right.
themselves. So I could see this one being either way.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, that was a good segment. I appreciate you bringing that up and having us do that today. We're going to shift gears now, and we're going to talk a little bit about this ESPN, YouTube television failing marriage that they have going on. And I think at this point, most of the listeners have a general idea as to what's going on. So we're not going to take too much time to lay out the story. However, we're recording this on a Monday evening, and at this time, there still has not been a deal that has been reached between ESPN, ABC, Disney, and YouTube TV. And what that means is that in addition to the college football games that were not able to be watched by subscribers of YouTube television, we're now going into the era of NFL games not being able to be watched by YouTube television subscribers. So this is starting to get particularly ugly because typically with these types of situations, we've seen them in the past. You get to the 11th hour and a deal is reached, and everybody was under the impression heading into this past weekend that it would be a similar situation. But that did not happen. And it appears that the next steps are potentially being taken for this to be a longer standoff. I saw right before we started recording this that if you go into your settings as a YouTube television subscriber, that you can actually get $10 per month off for the next 6 months. And what that suggests is that potentially this is going to be something that's going to take longer than a few days to resolve. Um, Before we go any further, do you what streaming service do you use, Thumbnail? Are you a YouTube TV guy?
We are a YouTube TV family, so yeah, we're experiencing that outage right now with ESPN and Disney, and let's just say we're a little frustrated over here as the consumer. So
Yeah. No, rightly so. I'm it's good to hear that you are a YouTube TV guy because I am not. So I'm coming at this entire situation from a different perspective. I'm a Sling guy. And I've talked with some other people about this topic in the last days, and the question was asked of me, hey, do you think this is eventually going to affect Sling? Or if you're a Hulu Plus person, do you think that's eventually going to affect them? And my response back to that was, no, I don't think it is. And the reason I think that is because I my take on this situation is that ESPN is essentially preparing to wage a full out war against the streaming content providers. And they have strategically decided to use YouTube TV as an example to effectively scare some of these other providers, namely Sling and Hulu, into playing ball with them when their contract negotiations come up. Not sure if you have any thoughts on that because I didn't run the numbers or anything. I don't know for a fact, but I'm basing this on perception that YouTube television is kind of the leader in
Hmm.
this sphere, and that some of these other guys are the secondary players. And so, you know, if that's the case, it would be kind of odd that ESPN was going after the leader unless they were trying to make an example of these guys.
Yeah, no, I think with YouTube TV, I think the biggest weakness that they have right now is, I'm not really sure what leverage they have over ESPN because ESPN has their own app. If I am understanding correctly, they own Hulu TV. Is that right? Or have an interest in Hulu
Yes,
TV?
there's
Okay.
there's an interest there because you can get a bundle by doing YouTube TV, or I'm sorry, Hulu, Disney, and something else where they can bundle it. So you're correct. And then also another one that they have an interest in is Fubo, which is another option outside of the three that we're talking about. So you're correct. Disney has a rooting interest in some of these other guys that might also be playing into not going after them.
Right. And really, I think the only leverage that YouTube TV necessarily has are viewers like us, where we're going to be a little stubborn and out of principle, we're not going to switch over too easy. I know you're a Sling guy, but for me, if I see games being played, I'm just going to stand pat and keep my YouTube TV. But I have already seen a handful of friends and family say, I don't really care whose problem it is. I just want to watch the game. We went to a Halloween party this weekend in Salem, and there was a there was an Old Miss fan there who was upset that Ole Miss we couldn't watch the game because they had YouTube TV, and without hesitation, they just signed up for Sling TV. I believe they did buy the day pass, but they didn't really care about the petty drama in the background. They just wanted to watch the game. So it makes me a little nervous that ESPN is going to win this war. I know you may disagree on that, but I do think bottom line people really just care about watching the game, and they may not realize how expensive this could be in the future. But that's kind of the trend that I've seen so far with some of friends and sports viewers.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. At the end of the day, the consumer does not want to get caught in this battle between two seemingly large organizations where it seems like greed is the thing that's driving a lot of these standoffs. But I, I you pointed out correctly that I do disagree that in the long run, ESPN is going to win this battle. In the short run, yes, they may. Eventually, you may have YouTube television cave because they don't want to lose subscribers to Sling or to Hulu or to whomever else because that can be very damaging to their bottom line. And it might be difficult to get those subscribers back if these customers either come to the conclusion that these other options are just as good, or if they just say, well, I had a really bad experience and I don't want to go back. But in terms of ESPN and their long term health as a result of this decision, that's where I see this being very damaging to them potentially. Because if you are the sports, the actual content, and you're watching this from a bird's eye view and you're watching your content providers go at it with each other, and just as an example, college football is looking at this and they see ESPN that they have a relationship with fighting with another downstream partner, YouTube television. In the end, the sports are also getting affected by this in a negative way because you have fans now who are not able to watch these games, and not only that, you have advertisers, you have sponsors who are not able to broadcast to those eyeballs either, because they just simply don't have the option. So when the contract negotiations come up between the college football entities and ESPN, is this going to be something that college football is going to remember and say, well, you're messing with our product and you're messing with our sponsors and partners' abilities to get to the end consumer that they want to get to. So maybe we're going to consider doing a deal with CBS, or we're going to consider doing a deal with Fox or with NBC. These groups that are not taking a scorched earth approach to a problem that ESPN does have. I mean, we get it. The carriage fees are skewed heavily towards the live sports content. This is generally speaking why people pay $75, $80 a month for these subscriptions. But it's not the only thing. So, I've heard some arguments that the whole point of ESPN trying to do this is that really what they want to do is have people come to their streaming service, and then ultimately they're going to jack the price up in a year and you're going to be paying $50, $60 a month for ESPN's content. But I would argue that a lot of people are never going to make that decision for two reasons. Number one, they don't want to pay $30 a month for it. And number two, sports, while being a major driver of a decision in terms of who you get your content from, it's not the only decision. I know you're in a similar situation, Thumbnail. I'm in one as well where, yes, sports drive the decision. I want to be able to watch all the sports, but at the end of the day, if my wife wants to be able to watch HGTV or Bravo, we've got to have the option to watch that as well. And ESPN and their $30 a month service doesn't offer that opportunity.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of the things that you just said, and there are so many points of view and topics you can speak about when it comes to this dispute. Just a few things that I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on are one, that the ESPN app I have heard isn't the best. It seems like they launched this product that uh, isn't very competitive from a interface or like user standpoint. Doesn't seem
Mm-hmm.
very user friendly. And then secondly, this is kind of a different topic. You have the SEC commissioner as well as a few college football programs in the SEC. I believe it was Arkansas football really pushing for this move away from YouTube TV. I don't want to open a can of worms too much when it comes to the politics of it all, but what's kind of your thoughts on the schools taking the side with ESPN on that in their app when it comes
Yeah.
to being user friendly?
Yeah, I saw that as well. It was not just the schools. I saw Greg Sankey, SEC commissioner, put something out of similar note there. And then ESPN went as far as to have their on air personalities do it as well, which, frankly, the only word that I can think of right now is cringe. That's cringeworthy that they would
I agree.
ask the on air talent to get involved in this situation. I mean, it reeks of desperation, in my opinion.
It feels like they're hurting us in a certain direction. Like, they're like, "Hey, come over here," and they're trying to get us to herd to their app, and it's a what's the word? Coordinated effort from many different fronts to get you to sign up for that service. So it definitely is a weird feeling to see that. I mean, it doesn't feel like it's much about sports when you see the football team Twitter account or the SEC commissioner's Twitter account, talk about the streaming service rather than the game itself, which I think is a little sad in my opinion.
Oh, for sure, for sure. We don't sign up for that. That's not going to get anybody to continue watching. And yeah, your other point that you made about the content and the general presentation of the app, I've noticed the same thing with the lower cost package that ESPN has. Also, and I'm not a tinfoil cap guy, but I was noticing on Saturday when I was watching one of the ESPN streams through Sling that it was really bad presentation as well. So, there was just a lot going on. It was not good optics for ESPN. I also think that from a long term perspective, when they take these types of approaches, which are really um, bold bets on things, um, they better be right, because if you're not right, you could put yourself in a really precarious position down the line. Just kind of going back to what I was saying about next negotiations, right? If they don't have the content, and right now they do to an extent, right? They've got college football, they've got Monday Night Football, they've got a lot of baseball and hockey. There's things that people want to watch, but that can change pretty quickly, quicker than people would think. And all it takes is losing some of these assets that they have for people to say, well, you know what, ESPN, you're not offered, you know, in a way that I want to pay for. I'm not going to buy your app because you don't have the sports that I want to watch.
Mhm.
It's not worth the 30 or whatever dollars it may be. We're not gonna subscribe at all. And then they start to lose a lot of that leverage that they have right now, offering the content that they do. So I've been pretty critical of ESPN in past episodes. I do, from a macro perspective, kind of see them taking a downward trajectory similar to networks like MTV in the past. And
Yep,
it could be a
certainly.
slow but sure, yeah, it could be a slow but sure death for some of these, for this network, if they
Right.
don't play their cards right.
When I think of ESPN, as a kid growing up, I think, millennials definitely associate ESPN with Sports Center and SC Top 10 and some of those daytime television shows. And it's just changed so much now. And, 20 years later in 2025, it seems like really the only content they have is live sports, like we've mentioned. And, First Take is just, I don't know how that show is still going. I guess they have to put something on during the day, but man, they've really dropped the ball and gotten lazy with their talk shows. And I don't know if they're 100% to be blamed for that, maybe because social media's kind of killed some of those talk shows because you can see all the highlights from your phone, but they really haven't adjusted or pivoted well to social media, in my opinion.
No, no, I would agree they have not, and it's hard. I mean, they're a very big ship. It's hard to move a ship that size quickly, or quickly enough to remain relevant. So there were some gaps that some other people were able to fill, um, quicker than ESPN was able to pivot. But at the end of the day, there are some things that you can do, and I don't think waging all out war with what really is a partner of you right now is the right approach at this point in time. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, I don't expect that this is the last time this topic is going to come up on this podcast, but for now, I mean, we're kind of sitting in limbo, wondering what's going to happen next.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So,
Yeah. But yeah, you mentioned, what could they possibly put on in place of those daytime television shows? Well, I've got an answer for you. Um, College basketball is back today. It is the kickoff of the season, and something that actually ESPN is involved with, and I love this. I think it's part gimmick, but also a really good way to fill the airwaves. Um, there has been college basketball on air, live college basketball since 8 o'clock this morning, and they've had games going on all day. So, you think about, well, what are the opportunities that they could fill? This is just one idea. It's obviously not an everyday thing, but it is something that, if you're a junkie of college basketball, or you just like the novel idea of, turning on a game during your lunch hour, I think it's something that can be attractive to a lot of different people. Um, but in celebration of the start of college basketball, and you tell me, Thumbnail, when do you start watching college basketball?
man, it really heats up around conference play, I would say. I do know they had those tournaments at the beginning of the year to pique everyone's interest. So I'll probably dabble into some college basketball, but in the fall time. But really, not until probably the new year around the NFL playoffs is when I'll really start paying attention. Me and my girlfriend Sarah go to Providence Friar games throughout the year, and it is a fun and friendly. It is a fun and cost effective way to leave the house and see a live sporting event. We can see the Providence Friars for $10 to $20 sometimes, and it'll be a nice date night. So I do think probably around January, February, going into March Madness play is when most people start paying attention, as well as myself.
All right, fair enough, and I agree with you. I mean, it's hard to pique people's interest for college basketball when they've got November college football and the NFL's heating up. However, here is an option for people if you're looking for something fun about college basketball. I compiled a list of games between real schools that kick off today, and I'm just going to go through a few of them. And I think it's always fascinating to see, some of the universities that actually exist in this country that play college basketball, that get a little bit of time in the sun, if you will, especially in the early season when everything is kicking off. So um, here is just a short list of the games that are being played today, November 3rd, for the kickoff of college basketball. You've got Florida National versus Florida International. Quite literally, a battle for Florida supremacy is going on today. I did not know that there was a Florida National. I think most people are familiar with the Panthers of Florida International, but there is also a Florida National. So those two are kicking off today. Um, this one's going to be interesting to you potentially, Thumbnail. This is for those listeners that are in Central Ohio. There is a DeSales College, and DeSales College is facing Davidson today. And the reason I thought this one was interesting is that Davidson has a guy by the name of, well, actually, I don't remember his name. Honestly, I don't have his name written down.
Steph Curry's son.
But his first name is no, Steph Curry's son. No, his first name is Nick, and he plays for Davidson. And his dad Scott is the coach of DeSales College. So you've got dad versus son today in a Division I versus Division III matchup.
Sounds like some reverse nepotism or something. I don't know. That's yeah.
Well, the story I read, and now that I'm thinking about it, I believe his name is Nick Corval. The story was that Davidson's head coach had heard from Nick that his dad's team would potentially be interested in playing a game. And so to some extent, there was a conversation that, yeah, that would be really cool to play my dad's team. So as crazy as that sounds, the nepotism aspect, or at least the fact that there was a relationship between those two schools, had something to do with this matchup coming to existence. Yeah.
Wow. The more you know, right?
Um, yeah, exactly. Moving right along, you've got a battle between two religious stalwarts, I'll call them. You've got Kentucky Christian versus Liberty. You've got a battle of beachfront properties. Both of these campuses have waterfront property on their campuses. You've got the New College of Florida taking on Florida Gulf Coast University tonight. So that's Sarasota's beachfront property versus Fort Myers beachfront property. So that one's pretty cool. For those fans of the show Blue Mountain State, there is actually a real Blue Mountain College. And Blue Mountain College is taking on Alabama A&M tonight. Blue Mountain College is their mascot are the Toppers. And this isn't a video podcast, but for those of you listening right now, go look up Blue Mountain College's logo. The Toppers logo looks quite a bit like a mountain goat, which again, if those of you listening have ever watched Blue Mountain State,
Mhm.
their mascot were the mountain goats. So I cannot believe that there is actually a college that is in such alignment with that television show's made up college.
Yeah, and after the game, you can go to Thad Castle's bar at Blue Mountain College too, can't you?
That's that's right. That's right. Ah, you're a fan. I can tell you're a fan. um,
Yeah, Thad hangs around college a little too much, trying to relive those glory days. But so if you see him after the game, tell him I said hi.
There you go. You've got an off-brand Army Navy matchup going on. SUNY Maritime takes on Army. Another game that I thought was interesting, and as a Commanders fan, that still is a little bit salty about the name change. Northwest Indian College, located in Bellingham, Washington, is taking on the Montana Grizzlies. And Northwest Indian College, what do you think their mascot name is?
Northwest Indian College, like the name of the mascot.
Yeah, what do you think they're called? What's their mascot?
Man, I mean, that's a tough one. Maybe you're gonna have to give me some help on this one.
Well, I'll give it to you. Similar to how the Miami Redhawks used to be known as the Redskins, uh, Northwest Indian College taking a page out of Miami's book. They're the Redhawks.
Wow. Yeah, I figured it was some sort of Native American name, but yeah, I wasn't sure which way they were going with that.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, how about this one? Fresno Pacific takes on Fresno State, and believe it or not, the Sunbirds, Fresno Pacific, are not associated in any way with Fresno State.
Wow.
Yeah, both located in Fresno, California, but absolutely no relation. In fact, Fresno Pacific used to be known as Pacific Bible Institute.
These a lot of these schools sound like they recruit from the local YMCA or church league basketball where they play basketball with the carpet on Sundays.
Well, that may be the case. I really don't know. I didn't do a lot of research on these teams. I was just surprised that some of these actually existed. Um, but sticking with the Bible theme, the College of Biblical Studies took on Prairie View A&M this afternoon. So that was an interesting battle between two teams down there in the South. It's actually surprising to me how many schools.
What division are these teams?
Yeah, I mean Prairie View A&M is a Division One team, um, but College of Biblical Studies. To be honest with you, I'm going to have to look that one up because I don't know what division they are.
I mean, that has to be a school for either priests or like clergymen or something. I mean, I don't even know how they would have an athletics program.
Listen to how they're described on Wikipedia. The College of Biblical Studies Houston is a private, nonprofit, non-denominational, evangelical co-ed Bible college.
Huh. I mean, I don't know how that comes about, but I mean, I had no idea that they were a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, neither did I. And honestly, I'm having a hard time determining what division they are in. They are an NCAA team, so they are higher than NAIA, but they are it is not clear what division they actually compete in. So if any listeners are a proud alum of the College of Biblical Studies, give us a shout and let us know where you guys compete. Um,
We'll send you a free beanie.
there you go. Last one I've got here, and this was mostly based on the fact that the mascot challenge is pretty interesting to me. UC Santa Cruz takes on San Francisco. UC Santa Cruz, their mascot are the Banana Slugs, and San Francisco are the Dons. So you got the Banana Slugs and the Dons taking on each other out west.
Yeah, that reminds me of college football where you play as mascots against each other. I mean, the mascot names there alone is the entire entertainment value.
Oh yeah, no, I remember the days of playing as the Stanford Tree. Nothing better than 22 trees running around in a field, and they always made every single one of those mascots 100 overall at everything. So they're like, if you ever made a mascot team take on like Ohio State for example, the mascots are winning 73-7.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I was a Syracuse Orange man myself. Watching those oranges run around were, you know, it's a very nostalgic feeling thinking about that.
Yeah, well, there you go. Now we have a reason to fire up a 20-year-old video game someday.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, this was This was fun, Thumbnail. I enjoyed this. Hopefully, listeners, you guys did as well, and you'll be back for more. We don't have anything else to cover this week, so go out there and if you can, watch the Monday Night Football game if you've got something other than YouTube television. And if you're a college basketball sicko, maybe throw on the UC Santa Cruz San Francisco game tonight. But wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening, appreciate you guys being on. And until next time, take it easy, Shuckers.